Hi, everyone. Before we get started today, we wanted to let you know that we recorded this episode of the podcast regarding business continuity planning to culminate around the 1-year anniversary of Hurricane Harvey and its aftermath. At the time of publishing, our neighbors on the southeast and mid-Atlantic coast are experiencing the effects of Hurricane Florence. Our thoughts and prayers are with those affected by Hurricane Florence. May you and your families be safe, and may you all experience a speedy recovery. If you listeners are looking for ways to help and donate to the relief effort, we'll have links in the show notes to several organizations accepting donations to aid those affected by the hurricane. And now on to this week's podcast.
Whether your advisory firm has 1 or 5 people, compliance will always be an issue. RIA Compliance Concepts is more than just another service provider. We truly care about seeing our clients prosper. That's why we started our podcast, the RIA Compliance Collective, providing up-to-date compliance guidance. We're passionate about doing our job so you can focus on doing your job. We understand regulatory compliance like the back of our hands, from full-service RIA registration to annual compliance reviews and everything in between. We're here to get you there.
Hello, and welcome back to the RIA Compliance Collective. I'm Megan Campbell. As always, I have with me Ivan Barretto and Collin O'Brien. Hey, guys.
Hey, Megan.
How's it going?
Pretty good. In today's show, we're going to cover a topic that's both highly critical to your advisory business, but it's also a little difficult to discuss, and that's business continuity planning. So unless you're a doomsday prepper or someone of that nature, you probably don't spend much time thinking about the worst case scenario, whether it's an event that could disrupt your business, like an act of God or some sort of large natural disaster or terrorist attack even if it's on, local or nationwide level. We tend to not think about those worst case scenarios. In fact, most people think those things could never happen to them. We always think those kind of things will happen to other people. But as a fiduciary, you do have a duty to make sure that your clients and their assets are shielded from the effects of those kinds of major business disruptions. What I want to start with today is what the wake-up call to the industry was. So, this happened in pretty recent history because, business continuity planning wasn't always a really big topic. But Collin, what would you consider to be the biggest wake-up call to the financial industry when it comes to this topic?
The biggest wake-up call was not only for the financial industry, but basically for the planet, was 9/11. The SEC and FINRA and the NYSE recognized that there was definitely some issues when you had a catastrophe such as 9/11. It was really great, and there was a fabulous job as far as maintaining a lot of the operations as far as the market goes and a lot of the automation that they placed in and the backup systems with that. The issue that came to rise, though, was a lot of these firms' internal operations, their communications, their call trees were not tested or planned sufficiently in order to maintain their operations. So a lot of these companies, a lot of these advisors and broker dealers were down and couldn't maintain their operations for several days after that event. Honestly, I was there. I remember exactly where I was when I first heard that terrorist attack, and everybody was shell-shocked. But that being said, advisors have a duty to their clients to be able to significantly address any catastrophe that comes along and set in a plan to be able to service their clients. My personal experience, a couple of years ago, I went down to Corsicana, Texas, just doing a simple branch exam for a broker dealer. And that morning I was in a bank, and the bank manager comes running in, and there was a thunderstorm outside. Bank manager comes running in and says, "You guys need to go to the safe right now." And sure enough, a tornado was going through Corsicana, Texas, and almost hit the building. It just hit about a quarter mile away. And it was my first time in a bank vault, and the second time in a tornado. But I had to go back and say, at least that broker dealer had sufficient backups to address if that tornado hit that building. Because if it did, that office is gone. There's no place to work. If the advisor got injured, what happens there? So that firm at least had a sufficient plan in place to address a catastrophe such as that, which means that you have to do significant analysis over your operations in order to come up with a plan. Then you got to design the solution to address those risks that you have. And then you need to implement this plan, test it, sell it to your employees, make sure that they own this operation, and then it's a living document. You got to maintain that. So, Ivan, do you have any input on the analysis?
Yeah, and so that's interesting that you mentioned the process, the structural parts of a business continuity plan. Interesting enough, a couple months ago, both Megan, myself, and Collin attended the Austin Compliance Roundtable, in which the SEC were guest speakers. And one of the things that we found interesting during that Compliance Roundtable is that during Hurricane Harvey, the SEC regulators admitted that they basically did a test run of some firms that were located in that area to basically, inquire about their business continuity plan and disaster recovery plan efforts. And was kind of a good way to, check and see if some firms had those things in place, and the regulators have always been, on an ongoing basis since Hurricane Sandy or 9/11 and Hurricane Sandy at the forefront have always been pushing for a lot of advisory firms to establish good business continuity plans or disaster recovery plans for their firms. There's some interesting aspects of a business continuity plan that you definitely want to take into account when you're devising or designing the plan itself. Most importantly, depending on the size and scope of your firm, you definitely want to at least have 2 designated persons that will be basically the point person to direct their employees on what they should be doing if there is a significant business disruption, such as a fire or tornado or whatnot. That's one of the crucial elements of any business continuity plan, is knowing who is in charge of directing the people. The next part of it is establishing a really good call tree. So just basically establishing a foundation of who is in charge of calling the clients, obviously, to let them know what's going on. Employees, obviously, for safety reasons, instructing them whether they should be working from home or not. And then obviously, finally, the regulators letting them know, there was a significant business disruption and we're currently trying to get back up and running. The other aspect of it is designating the various areas or locations in which employees can continue working from. In this day and age, in the digital age, everything that you would need to do and complete and run your business is pretty much digital. So you can set up systems in place where people can work remotely from home, or find a temporary location and you're up and running in several minutes. But if you're a firm that is still not transitioned into the digital, the cloud, and have internal servers and whatnot, then the time frame for getting reestablished could be delayed because of that. And especially if you have paper records, your books and records are in paper format. But the other aspect of it is you definitely want to have kind of a call sheet of all the vendors that you use, from your phone to internet to who your insurance policy is with, your financial information, your custodial information, which is important as well. Basically, a call list that if anything were to happen, you can use that call list to reestablish services. And then the most important thing is making sure you have a backup procedure and criteria in place for your books and records. If you've not transitioned things to the digital, the cloud and whatnot, and you have things in paper format, are those paper files in a fireproof safe? Do you have copies of those things? Those are things that you need to look at when you're designing your business continuity plan and devising, okay, well, we don't have copies of these paper records. We need to either make additional paper copies or scan them and start transitioning into a paperless office. With that being said, there's still, as far as implementation purposes, there's going to be challenges. Obviously, some of it is the lack of communication with potential employees that you have on why a business continuity plan is so crucial to the business and what the reasoning behind it is. Obviously, that can be solved by training and going over the plan in a detailed session with the employee. The other part of it is underestimating the recovery time. Like I mentioned, Some of these things can be delayed because your records are not in the cloud and they're paper format. And you may, if you didn't make backup paper copies or scan them in, you would have to repaper clients. So those are the things that could delay the implementation process of a business continuity plan. And then, what interestingly enough leads to, when people set up business continuity plans, there's a set it and forget it mentality. And they say, okay, well, everything's good. I don't need to worry about this anymore. I have it all in place. It's finalized. We're good to go. I don't need to look at this anymore. That's a common misconception. When you have a business continuity plan, it's a fluid document. And as Megan will allude to or chime in about the business continuity plan, there's things that you can't just set it and forget it. It's something that, right, Megan, it's a fluid document. You always have to look at it and update that information.
That's right. It's definitely a living document. It's something that you're going to want to update. I mean, pretty much anything that changes in your business will affect your BCP. So if you offer different services to clients, or you add or remove a service provider, maybe you change your custodians, or you add a third-party money manager. If you are a sole owner and you add employees, or even like a digital assistant, anything like that, you're going to need to update your BCP so that you have their contact information, that you have the correct phone numbers and addresses, and for your service providers, even copies of their BCPs, so you know what'll happen if they have a significant business disruption, how it'll affect your clients' accounts. So it's definitely a living document. We can't really stress that enough. It's not something that you can just, put in a file cabinet or file it away on the cloud and, maybe look at it once a year. This is something that you definitely always have to keep an eye out on and update it throughout the year. Also, something that you need to be cognizant of, and I haven't kind of touched on this, is training your employees so that they're aware of the importance of the BCP and what their role is. I know in the past, I've heard, people kind of just say, if something like this happens, I'm going to just take care of myself and take care of my family. The last thing I'm going to think about is my clients or the firm's clients. And, that's understandable because you do, or we go into survival mode with these kind of things, obviously. But then once the floodwaters recede, so to speak, your clients are still going to need access to their accounts. They're still going to need their retirement distributions to flow on that regular basis so they can buy groceries and other things. Or, if they were part of a natural disaster, they may need to withdraw funds to help out with home repairs or to help buy a car or anything like that. So they're going to be thinking about that. So, like it's been said, with great power comes great responsibility. So you need to, instill that into your employees to set those expectations of what their role is, and maybe even bring it down to that human level that, there are basic needs that your clients are going to need after these kind of events. You need to make sure that your clients have that as well. So then on top of that, I mentioned kind of like looking at your BCP on an annual basis, but you definitely want to look at it at least annually and even test it. You don't just want to look at it. There are various ways you can test it, and it can get maybe a little awkward because, no one's a little kid anymore. You don't like to play pretend, but that's basically what you have to do when you're testing your BCP. You can maybe even pretend like, there's a day without internet, or you can act like a doomsday prepper and make sure you have your go bag ready. If you were testing out your BCP, what would you have in your go bag?
Definitely all the contact information, a backup laptop, a backup cell phone, perhaps, mainly just so you can get back up and running and contact all the principals of your firms to maintain that operations. And there's several other tips that a lot of people just don't address that I've seen in business continuity plans over the years. When it comes to that testing, they don't do a physical testing, whereas they go to their second site to see whether or not the communications work or what have you. Like with the Houston thing, is that when the whole operations go down, they didn't really address how they could manage that threat significantly. But there's a lot of other little things to make sure that in your call list that you have the right phone numbers, to make sure that you have the right contacts, to make sure it's large enough in scope where you're including your regulators on your call list. You're including, if you have a retainer with a law firm, to include that, your accountant, your compliance consultants. And not only that, if you have a website, to make sure that you have a drop-down page if the web goes down, that if somebody clicks on your website, they can at least get the contact information for the firm. So that's all those little bitty things that kind of pertain, and it doesn't seem important now to address, but that's the thing with the business continuity plan is that it sets you up to where it is important when it needs to be important. And that's basically it.
And so another thing regarding that people need to be aware of is a significant business disruption in this day and age is not necessarily limited to like a natural disaster or man-made disaster. We're talking about cyber now, like cyber security breaches and interruptions.
Yeah.
So that's something that a lot of people, they automatically think significant business disruption, it's a fire or, a tornado or hurricane or whatnot, but that's still now in this day and age, a significant business disruption is cyber, like the cyber security breach or interruption as well. So which leads us to our potential next podcast when we talk about the importance of cybersecurity policies and procedures and discussing that as an important aspect to your compliance program. So with that being said, this has been, we've given you some pretty good tips. And Megan, do you have anything else to add?
Mainly just that, I would say the two big takeaways from this is that one, your BCP, get it done and have it in, have it as accurate as you possibly can. It's a living document. It's important to your clients. And then also that you're going to have to test it and test it annually just to make sure it actually works. Because you might think you have the most thorough BCP out there, but until you test it, you're never going to see the holes. So definitely test it. So it's living and and you need to test it. But I also want to let you know that we are going to have in our show notes some additional guidance that the SEC issued. So you can always go there for some more information. And just wanted to thank you all for joining us today and hope you join us next time on the RIA Compliance Collective. Until next time, we're here to get you there.
Thank you for listening to the RIA Compliance Collective. Your support is greatly appreciated. If you want to experience the RIA Compliance Concepts difference yourself, visit riacc.io. From mock audits to customized compliance procedures, ongoing compliance assistance, and beyond, we're here for you always. Keep listening to discover more on how you can keep your advisory firm compliant so you can focus on achieving your goals. RIA Compliance Concepts. We're here to get you there.